Good morning, everyone. It's really exciting to get started, and we're so glad you've joined us here for this empowerED TV live session. And I'm really excited to get started. We've all had a chat just before we've had a chance to get started, and so it's time to really get into a really awesome conversation for the next hour and a half. Magandang umaga and kumusta kayo lahat? Welcome one and all to this special anniversary edition of empowerED Live. We are here live to celebrate the power that lies within each of us as educators from all around the world. I may be here in Vancouver, Canada, but I'm going to be joined by some speakers from the Philippines, from Japan, and from both coasts of the United States, along with viewers in a number of countries around the world. And it's awesome to see people commenting and saying hello, letting us know where they're from, where they're watching from, and sharing some greetings from their community. This session is not a show and tell of excellence, but instead it's an opportunity to hear about the many ways that our guests have unlocked their potential, how they've moved toward an empowered pathway in education. Make sure you post a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and take a moment to answer the special question that I ask each of our guests at the end of their segment. My name is Reid. I'm a career education and music teacher here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. I'll be your host for this celebratory live session. For years as a music teacher, I felt very confident in my skills and I had a vision for my students. But a big change happened for me when I recognized I needed a vision for my own professional growth. I found my power source. I found that thing that opened my eyes to trying new ways to contribute to education. If I was to expect leadership from my students, I better be demonstrating that leadership myself. My power source was fueled by participating in my provincial and national professional associations, by collaborating with teachers on international projects, and through meaningful relationships with my edu-friends, those teachers who I consider part of my global family. And I'm excited because I know a number of them are watching, especially a number of teachers from across the Philippines who I've had the chance to visit in Naga City and in Dunsol, or I've had a chance to connect with no matter which region they're from all across the country. In 2015, I was a top 50 finalist for the Global Teacher Prize, and my life was forever changed by discovering how invaluable it is for teachers to lift each other up, to compete against ourselves, not each other, and to recognize that with great teacher power comes great teacher responsibility. So now it is my absolute pleasure and privilege to start welcoming some guests whose stories of empowerment are ones we can all relate to. These stories aren't specific to any one country, a single culture, or even a single school. They're about educators making change that started with the simplest of actions. So I'm really excited to welcome two very good friends to start things off. Dr. Nadia Lopez is a former principal, respected author, a visionary role model, and she's also a parent, which I think is a really important thing to know about Nadia as we talk to her. She joins us today from Brooklyn, New York, and she is the brilliance behind the empowerED initiative. Nadia was a Global Teacher Prize in 2016 and is a super dear friend, so I'm really glad that she's joining us. Also joining us in this segment is Jim Toscano, who we all, of course, know from the empowerED initiative. He is an EdTech mentor, a teacher, a strategic thinker, and a champion for others. He's the reason we've all come together as a community connection through empowerED, and Jim was a Global Teacher Prize finalist in 2017. I have one more thing I want to say about these awesome people. They are both driven by purpose and never by ego. They're into curating opportunities for colleagues to connect and recognize potential. And I should also say they are among the most special colleagues I have made and connections I've made on my global education journey. So I can't tell you how exciting it is for the three of us to share this time with all of you. So I have some questions for you two. And we, of course, know each other really well. And we've had a lot of time together driving in a car between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I think getting lost once or twice between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and having text message exchanges when we're not even sure what time of day or night it is for the other two. I want to start by recognizing empowerED and empowerED as two really successful initiatives that have brought teachers together. So the first question that I think we would all like to hear an answer to and to get to know a little bit about is what inspired you to start that platform for other educators? Nadia, can you talk to us first? And I noticed the paintings behind you, and they're fantastic.
Thank you. I started Elevated simply because I felt that there wasn't anyone really making sure that social, emotionally, mentally, um, I was okay, especially as a leader. I found that we spend so much time making sure that children are okay. And as a leader, I made sure that my staff was okay, but I didn't see where there was intentionality about making sure wellness, personal development, and sustainability was at the forefront. And so when I thought about there being this gap, I just figured, I might as well create it myself. And Elevated just simply is aspiring for everyone to learn so that this way they can, and learn the things that you need in order to be better for yourself, lead others so that they can be better, and then leverage your relationships so that you can be best for your community. And so the idea is that you're taking yourself to a higher level so that this way you can be the best in everything that you want to do.
It's interesting because as you described that, what I heard as as a really key point is that you didn't see the solution that you needed. And
Mm-hmm.
so instead of waiting for it or going on an eternal hunt to find it, you started to create it for yourself, knowing that you're not alone in that pursuit, that there's other people looking for that. Would you say
Exactly.
that's a really key part?
And I think that it's also the problem that I see a lot is that we are shamed in saying that we need help. We are shamed in saying that we need to focus on ourselves because we're supposed to be about our profession. And I love education and I love all the things that comes with it. It allows you to empower others, right? But if you're not being taken care of, if you're not the one putting yourself first, then you compromise the possibilities of helping children so that they can have a brighter future. So that's
Yeah.
where I created it.
That's it's exciting to hear how that, how your work came to be and what your thinking is, because that's the hard part. We see the work, but we don't always know what that thought process is connected to it. Thank you, Nadia. So
Yeah.
Jim, I want to ask you the same question. What inspired you to make empowerED happen, on multiple platforms and through podcasts and through these live sessions? Where did this all stem from?
With all honesty, it's really through Global Teacher Prize. The moment I became part of the global community, I was amazed, inspired by a lot of teacher stories from the different parts of the world. I mean, like reading the story of your story, like Mark and Nadia and everyone. It's been really, really like, if you want to understand more about the challenges and opportunities of being a teacher, then you have to make sure that you read, listen to the real stories on the ground level. And I felt like in the Philippines, I've never heard much stories about teachers. I mean, like, you have stories of teachers being in the media just because he went viral, right? But I want to dig deeper because I want to find the more genuine stories so that we can have real talk. I mean, like, having real talk is something that I've learned from people like you. Nadia, for example, she's very, very courageous and brave in facing those, challenges and issues. I remember asking Nadia one time, I don't know, Nadia, if you can remember this, but I asked Nadia how does she manage to, talk about issues while being part of that system, right? Which literally has a lot of issues. I mean, like the education systems around the world have their own issues. And I'm like, Nadia, how do you distance yourself? Be a very objective person, have a very objective perspective, but then in the end, still recognize that you are part of that system. I mean, I got inspired by Nadia's Elevated. There are a lot of stories or platforms out there, and I just want to have something like for the Filipino teacher. Um,
I think it's interesting, Jim, as you talk about stories of Filipino teachers, because, a year ago in June 2019, there was an episode of MMK about our friend Ryan, who's a teacher in Bicol. And, it's interesting to know that a teacher's story was dramatized in that way. And wouldn't it be so interesting if there was an MMK spinoff all around the world that would tell the stories of teachers, in the context of their community, going and following and seeing that path of commitment that they pursue. I think, for both of you, and I'm going to ask Jim to answer this question first. What has been, the biggest success or the biggest challenge when you started the platform? Not as you've gone through it, but so that people can recognize that first hurdle is not the one to stop at, but to get over it, because it can only get easier and get better. So what was that success or that challenge that you faced right at the very beginning?
Again, something that I learned from Nadia, and I'm just really saying this because I love her and I've learned a lot from her. She's a mentor. It's starting with a vision. I always look at Nadia's, the vision board and everything, and it's something that I've learned from her. Starting with this platform, the first thing that I had in mind was what really is my vision, because I want to anchor myself on a very, very concrete why. Right? Why am I starting this? And I've been trained, so I'm a philosophy graduate. So I've been trained to always ask why. And that's my life experience. If I don't do things solidly, concrete why, if there's no vision behind it, and then what happens is that it's just a fad for me. I just do a podcast because everyone's doing a podcast. I want to have a YouTube channel because everyone's doing a YouTube channel, but I don't want that thing to happen. So I started with I look at the vision of everyone. I mean, like, I look at Nadia's vision, I look at other people's vision and how they craft it. I read Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. Mm-hmm. Those kinds of readings help me understand more of what I really wanted to do. So the biggest challenge there is, clarifying your why and not being pressured to go to scale it up, in a very, very quick manner, rapid manner, because, the higher you are, the harder you fall afterwards. So, taking time to grow. I mean, organically.
Well, and that very focused sense of purpose is what you've described, and I would say looking at the podcast as one way to reach people. You can't be staring at a screen when you're on a hobble or a tricycle or walking or in your Grab on your way to school. But a podcast you can have in your ears and you can be hearing. And so I see how you've thought about your purpose and had those different channels to connect with people in ways that's most meaningful to them. That's really interesting. So Nadia, you have, of course, you have a number of initiatives that you've undertaken, especially I've noticed in the last year or so, a really different type of presence. And, whether it was, at the beginning or at this moment of growth, when you expanded the different ways that you're reaching out to people. I asked Jim about the beginning, but I'm going to ask you about that moment when things felt ready to accelerate, ready to expand. What was that big success or that big challenge to get over to let that, that next bloom and blossom moment happen? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm going to be clear and transparent and say, for me, the challenge is self-sabotaging. Sometimes we face imposter syndrome. So I do have a lot of initiatives. And in my mind, just like Jim says, I have a vision. I write it down. I put it down on paper. I'll collect photos, whatever I need to do in order to put it in a place of visualizing what I want. But sometimes, I often think about it that, who am I to create this? Maybe I'm taking on something way bigger than I should. Maybe there's enough things that are out there. Maybe I'm doing too much. And so even when I went to the Philippines to speak, to keynote at the event that Jim had at Xavier, I'm surrounded by people and I feel like I'm definitely in a tribe. But part of me was like, oh my God, I'm in the Philippines. I've been asked to do a keynote. Like, how did I even get here? You know, I'm a principal, yes, but I'm a principal all the way in Brooklyn, New York. And, you know, I have children who are some of the poorest in the world. And yet there's something about my story and something that Jim saw in me to invite me to be amongst his peers and to speak to leaders. And so I had to literally talk to myself and say, you deserve to be here. There's something that connects you more, far greater than what you think you don't have. You're an educator. You care about children. You're here to talk to other people who, you know, want to see and know that there is hope. And so when I did that, and then I got to Xavier and everyone was so kind and nice, I was able to dispel my own myths in my head. And so I think that a lot of us do that. A lot of us sometimes believe that we're not worthy, that, you know, what we dream of, sometimes we don't even get the support that we need, right? Because oftentimes people would say to me, you know, you're a principal, just be the principal. You don't have to do anything else. And then, you know, when I thought about leaving my school, the first question was like, but what are you going to do if you're not a principal? And so all of those things I had to contemplate, but then it went back to elevated. How am I helping others with their personal development? How am I helping them understand the importance of wellness? And so when I was grounded in my mission and my vision, it helped me to realize that I'm doing what I've been purposed in life to do, and empower others to see that there are other ways of, you know, still educating. But I still love what I do and still support my school, just in a different way.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when I know when I hear you just say the word elevate. You know, I immediately get this image in my mind of you taking others, lifting them up with you, you know, above the craziness, above the busyness, above all of the policy, the politics, the challenges, to just get that perspective from above it all to say, you know, what are we here for? Who are we here to support and serve? And you know, it's a form of servant leadership that is, you know, incredibly valuable. It's certainly, you know, one of the big trends in education is to be thinking about how do I give to others while leading them at the same time, you know, providing both of those at once. And so I think that's really, it's really special how you've pieced those things together and how you've been honest about your purpose and your drive. You know, I want to ask each of you about, you know, why it is that we all need to empower or elevate ourselves as teachers, you know, as educators in our communities. You've answered a little bit about that, but I'd like you to talk about how teachers can do this, how they can get started. You know, it's one thing for us, for any of the three of us, to talk about, you know, where we are and in our progress and development. But I can think for myself of a moment last summer. I was visiting Ryan Homan in San Jose and, you know, outlying barangay outside of Donsol. And, you know, it got a little bit late. And I said, how will I get back into town? And he said, okay, well, you're going to go on a hubble. Well, I have never ridden a motorcycle until that moment, when I, in shorts and a t-shirt and slides. I mean, I was not prepared to be on a motorcycle for 45 minutes back into town. But as you know, we got on and we went over the hanging bridge out of the village, you start to realize this is what it means to jump into something and to trust someone with you. I wasn't driving, thank goodness, but trust someone with you and to go on this adventure because you know that it will get you to where you need to be. But much like that moment for me, what kind of advice would you offer to the people who are joining us today about how they can actually get started with their own initiative, that feeling of empowerment and elevation in our profession?
Me or Jim?
Nadia, why don't you go first?
Well, you know, I believe in God, and I believe that you have to start with your faith. And trusting that if you have an idea and you have a vision, that it was given to you by your creator. And so that's why I always write everything down, because in back at 2:2, it says, write it down and make it plain, right? And so you have to trust and believe that there was a seed planted within you. And when you put it into existence, everything that you need will come, whether it is the support, the mentor, the resources, all of those things will seem to come together in a way that you didn't even think was possible, right? Um, and it's all about surrounding yourself with the right people. So, for instance, when I think of my support network, I would say Mark and Jim are two of those individuals, right, that I can lean on, that they will check in on me, and we will check in on each other. And like Mark said, it could be 1 a.m. my time, 1 p.m. Jim's time, but then it's like, what time is it? Like 10 a.m., 10 p.m. your time or something like that. Like, it's just, it doesn't matter. We just know we have each other. And so you have to take inventory of who are the people who you surround yourself with. Because there are people who are good and have good intentions, but just don't know how to provide you with the support you need. And then there are people who don't have good intentions, right? And so that's energy. And the transference of energy, you need to make sure you are surrounded with positive energy. So writing your vision down, maintaining your faith and knowing your creator, and then surrounding yourself with positive people.
Yeah, get yourself a good thick journal and write down your plans.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that we're going to hear from a well-respected professor of education who specializes in literacy a little bit later. This is all coming together, this idea of writing it down. Thanks, Nadia. So, Jim, what about you? What is that thing to do to get started?
Again, I will always go back to writing the vision. I think that's one thing that I really appreciated. And coming from my own personal experience, it's about also breaking free from, I mean, like, in my own experience is like, I always listen to what other people would say, right? As a teacher in the Philippines, sometimes you feel like you're always asked to follow a certain school leader, a certain policy or whatever. Sometimes you just need to tell yourself that, I want to break free from these things and I want to do what I want to do. I mean, like, sometimes you need to have that courage. You need to you have to have that kind of push. And yeah, sometimes it might not start within you because sometimes you feel, scared about it, not sure. So I always love to hear stories from other people, like what Nadia has mentioned, surrounding yourself with the people who should be inspiring you. I mean, I even tell my students, like, don't waste your time staying with people, being friends with people who will not, be good with you or might not influence you to become a better person. That's something that I always tell my students, and I think that's something that I want to share. Don't waste your time being, acting like a cool person, doing this because everyone's doing it. Start to live your own truth. I mean, I'm amazed I'm saying this, but these things are not something that came from me. It's something that I've heard from everyone, from you, Mark, from Nadia, from our friends in Global Teacher Prize. I mean, like, everyone's saying, live your own truth. You will never hear that in the Philippines because, we treasure, you know, following people and all those kinds of things. Sometimes it's really, really good to break free from whatever people will tell you to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is so exciting to have this time with both of you on screen together, and as we start to wrap up this segment, which kind of brings a bit of a tear to my eye that we might have to wrap this up. We're going to end each of the segments today with a special question, and I'm going to invite the audience as well to answer this question in the comments. Post a comment and tell us what your perspective is, what you're thinking wherever you are. So this final question will go to you first with this, Nadia, and Nadia doesn't know this is coming, so this is going to be all very fresh and very honest and true. So Nadia, who empowered you? Who is that person who helped you see how much power you possess?
My mom. My mama, everybody knows Mama Love, they follow me. She empowered me to know that I was significant and great, and that I was special. And and she made sure that I understood the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people, being in the right places, and always showing up as your best as the best version of yourself. So my mom.
Ugh. Okay. All right, Jim, what about you? Who has empowered you? Who's that person who helped you see just how much power lies within?
It's always about the family, I think. Right? I grew up in a family. We don't have that much. I mean, we have something to live by every day, daily. I mean, like, but they were my parents were the one who taught me like to have a very, very high ambition. And I still remember I don't think they know this, but one reason why I didn't go to the high school where my mother is teaching, because I don't want to study in her school. But I made that very first decision in my life, and they supported me. I mean, like, that was the first decision. I mean, it's sometimes when I think about it, it's just so funny. It's just because I don't want to be in the same school with my mother, because I don't want that kind of pressure. But when I made that decision, that was the first time that they really supported me. So I feel like that kind of empowerment, you make your own decision, but at the same time, you have people who will support you, like, to move forward and help you be better. And can I just take this opportunity? You guys are part of those people who have been pushing me, like, supportive all the way. Dr. Nadia, Mark, I mean, like, you've traveled to the Philippines. You've traveled to the Philippines, and I feel like those are the great moments that we have together. So there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think Nadia would say the same thing, that the journey of getting to the Philippines is much more than flying on a plane. It's about the connection and the relationships that are made, not just with you, but with also the school community around you, the colleagues that are connected to your community as a teacher. I think it's really, really exciting for us both to know that we have been to your school, that we have been in your community, and we've had a chance to go and see so many beautiful places in the Philippines, whether it was landing around the Mayon at 6:30 in the morning, or if it was Nadia's very long drive through heavy traffic to get out to see some beautiful beaches, and Das Marinas. I think that's where you went, Jim. But it's exciting to know that through all of that, here we are today sharing these stories and hearing from each of you. We're in 3 different time zones. We're in 3 different totally parts of the world, and with 3 different stories to tell that all come together. So thank you very much to both of you for being a part of this segment. And I just want to sort of point out, Nadia and Jim are great examples of what happens when teachers discover the depth of their own influence matched with their responsibility and that sense of community that exists in education. I've spent hours talking to both of them over the past few years, and I still continue to discover how brilliant they are. There's new ideas, there's new perspectives. There's even times where we've gone back to rethink things we've discussed before to make sure that we're really thinking, in a progressive way and thinking about new ways to keep making everything better. So thank you very much to both of you for joining us. And I'm sad to see you go from the screen, but I know we have some more fantastic guests to join us here in just a moment. So thank you to both of you, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, Mark. Bye, Nadia.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well, okay, we're half an hour in. That's one segment. We have 2 more segments of people to join us. And in a moment, I'm really excited that our next guests are going to help us examine some different forms of leadership. Seeing leadership as a verb, as an action, as really a way of being in education. First joining us is going to be Dr. Dina Campo, who's a renowned researcher and educator, a champion for literacy pedagogy development, and a former undersecretary at the Department of Education in the Philippines. It's really exciting to have her join. And when Jim and I were discussing this event, we were so thrilled that she would be coming in to join us. She's just turning on her camera now and is going to pop up on her screen, and I'm thrilled that she's with us. I also want to say Ohayo gozaimasu to Kazuya Takahashi, who is a teacher from Tokyo, Japan, whose work combining literacy methods with design thinking and Lego earned him a spot in the 2016 Global Teacher Prize Top 10. It is so exciting. It's been a few years since I've been face-to-face with Kazu, and so it's so exciting to have him with us, and also Dr. Dina to be joining us. So welcome to both of you. We're going to start with a question, and these questions, are special because we're thinking about leadership and getting action underway with our first guests, and now here we're going to talk to you about these different ways that we can discover that leader element in ourselves. So, Dr. Dina, I'm going to ask you this question first. How do you think that teachers can seek and find that leader in themselves? Especially in the current situation that we have right now. We're all facing a challenge with the pandemic, but maybe there's no better time for us to be looking within to find that leader. How can teachers be doing that? I think we've lost Dr. Dina's audio just for a moment. So why don't I go to Kazoo to answer the question first? How can we find that leader within?
It's really difficult. Oh, by the way, good morning, everyone from Tokyo. Ohayou gozaimasu. I'm Kazuya. It's a really difficult question. I have been thinking about it for a few days. But everyone tries to copy the leadership. Like I don't know, maybe Winston Churchill, Bill Clinton. I don't know. There's so many leaders that on magazine, books, right? And you guys are a teacher, maybe if you guys are a key teacher, you're just keen to knowing a lot of leadership stuff, and then you just after finishing just right before finishing reading the book, you realize, oh, this is not my way. It is totally impossible. You see the gap. Here, you're here. Your leader is here. There's huge gap. You're just overwhelmed. Oh, yeah, stop. Right. So I think your leadership is not just copying great person. You can find yourself, in there you have a totally different kind of strengths of characteristics. You're like other person. You want to serve other person. So there's two different kinds of leadership, right? One person is trying to lead your followers, but the other is you try to give initiative to them, and you try to serve. There, right? So there's totally different kinds of leadership. So don't copy the models. Just try to find your strengths, and there's totally diverse, value system. So try to first of all find your values and also strengths. Then you can find your, kind of sensible aspects of leadership in yourself.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you describe you can lead from out front, you can lead from within. And my background as a music teacher, my job all the time was to lead from up front, conducting the band, or the choir, or the orchestra. And it's a very different kind of feeling when we sit in the group or we stand back to figure out how we motivate that leadership. I like that you've drawn that kind of comparison. Thank you for that. Dr. Dina, we've got you, and I hope we have your audio okay once you're unmuted. If you can talk a little bit about how you think teachers, especially teachers perhaps early in their career, could pursue leadership or find that leadership quality within themselves.
Yes, thank you. First, good morning, everybody from Manila. Hello, Kasu. Good to meet you. I met Mark earlier. Just to share, I think that novice teachers or young teachers can find strength in themselves first as confident teachers in their classrooms. I think this is a very important fundamental that teachers should feel that in their classrooms they are able to manage their classes, their lessons, their students in ways that make them creative, critical, engaged. And I think that's where it all begins for a teacher. I think that it's in that classroom that teachers feel and see the good that they do every single day. So if the question is how can a teacher find the leader in him or herself, I think that's the first point of entry.
You just mentioned something I find also very interesting. That we as teachers, we get the privilege of teaching children, and because of that, every action that we take as we model leadership, like you said, we can see the results. We can see that response. And the the reality of being a teacher, and I know Kazoo can talk about this a lot, is it can't be about evaluation. It has to be around assessment and our ability to read the room and understand. I demonstrated this leadership. I chose this approach. Let's see, what feedback did I get that was obvious or that was maybe not as obvious, that was body language, not verbal. Those kinds of things can be so important for us. So I appreciate hearing that, and especially tying it to what I know Kazoo is well known for in really understanding that there's so much more to education than just evaluation kind of points. I wonder, in the context that we're currently facing right now, where teachers in the Philippines are disconnected from their students, and because they're not in the classroom, but they are finding interesting ways to stay connected and to keep connected through community, perhaps through through TV and radio and visits into to students' homes. What are some of the things that you're seeing, Dr. Dina, in the Philippines right now that are really good examples of teachers discovering this leadership opportunity and demonstrated professionalism?
Right. Thank you for that question. I think that I'll relate it to my answer to the first one, right? It's because you need to draw strength from confidence, I think. Being a confident teacher makes you become confident to try or enter into new horizons, so to speak. So if you are confident, for example, as a math teacher, you know your stuff, you know your content, you know how to play around with it, because that's the core. If you are what they say, a master of your subject matter, you can look at that subject matter from the lens of digital media, you can look at it from the lens of print media, you can look at it from the lens of no media at all, and you can find ways to bring it forward. I think that some of the teachers I've been speaking to over the last few months, their concern more than their subject matter is connectedness. How do they how do they get connected with their students again and their fellow teachers? And I think those who who blaze the trail, those who start reaching out, those are they're the ones with innate leadership that they don't even recognize. They just look at it as, I'm making connections because that's what human beings do.
Right.
But the first people who do it, those are the people who've actually decided in themselves that they're strong, and then they can move forward and help others and hold hands with others even from a distance. I think that deserves to be recognized. One of the stories I frequently tell is that during one of the worst typhoons in the Philippines, the Haiyan, the
Mm.
Yolanda,
Yeah.
that tsunami that devastated an entire city, island. The children, when they didn't know where to go, they went to their teachers. They went to the homes of their principals or their teachers, and because that's where they felt safe. And I think that example is such a strong example of how teachers have become leaders for these children.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's that response to that
Mm,
moment that allows teachers there to say
mm,
Region 8 is great. And we recognize that the role of a teacher is not just attached to the
mm,
school day, it is attached
mm.
to the whole community existence. Now,
Yes.
one of our viewers, Farrellyn, made a comment about the fact that when we have these challenges, it helps us, recognize how alive we are and what
Mm,
strengths we have to overcome them. And sometimes we don't always know those skills are there until we're pushed to look at them and consider them and reflect on them.
mm.
Kazoo, could you talk a little bit about your experience, of course, in Japan, about what teacher leadership looks like, and what forms of leadership can teachers be focusing on, maybe as a starting point, or maybe as a way to grow as a professional?
Wow, it's really big. I was expecting the same question as you gave to Dina. It's like I was like, I've been thinking about it, but I still got a totally different question. Like,
It's a
oh no.
surprise.
Well, you're challenging me. I know. Well, um, as I said, it's totally different kinds of leadership you have in yourself. So a novice teacher or young teachers can find themselves. But basically, the most important role of teachers is to take care of your students in front of you, right? But if you're not, that is not teaching. If you're not like, if you think yourself is just like your role is just teach subject, maybe it's not you're not suited to your teaching job. Your teacher is much more than your teaching. Actually, teacher means much more than just teaching subject, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you just say you have to be a model for students. I mean, they're just the next generations, right? So your role is not just like you're cramming knowledge, you're just passing knowledge to the next generation. Your role is to lead them to the right way. I don't know. There's the right way. There's a right way, right?
Yeah.
But you need to do your best. So you need to just devote your full commitment to your teaching job. That is the first thing. I don't know. There's a leadership, as I say, like a strong leadership or just full servant leadership, whatsoever. But first of all, you need to find yourself. Are you just 100% committed to your job? We're just doing this on the side of business. We're just making money for this. You really wanted to devote your life to teaching or leading the kids for the next generation. That is an important starting point. I think that is a starting point.
Mm-hmm. There's something you said at the beginning of your answer that caught my attention very quickly, about starting with the students because they're the ones in front of you. And as much as we all know that skill development will rely on teachers scaffolding the learning experiences and sequencing them out in a way that creates this continuous generative empowerment, and that's how we cultivate leadership in our classrooms. I just found it so interesting that starting point statement you made is so clear. Start with the students; they're the ones in front of you. Dr. Dina, you come from expertise in literacy pedagogy, especially around dyslexia, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience in showing leadership in that particular specialty area. I'm a music teacher, so I haven't had the same professional development or teacher education around certain literacy pedagogy. And so how have you taken that specialist knowledge and shown leadership to others to further expand the the professionalism of others to help students that might have a literacy need?
Right. Thank you again for that question. I just want to start off by saying that um, I got into it because I had a student in grade two when I was a grade two teacher who, for the life of me, I could not get him to learn to read. Um, on a Monday, he would be doing his CVCs, his words, but on the next day, on the Tuesday, it would all be done and gone, and we would have to start all over again. And that's how I started to wonder if the training I received as an elementary school teacher wasn't working for this guy. What sort of training did I need? So I think that's the first key point, is to remember that when things don't work out in a classroom, the first person you question is yourself. Yes, not the child. It's never the child's fault, especially little children. Maybe these high school students, you kind of think a little bit more, right? But for younger children, you need to entertain the first hypothesis you entertain is your own inadequacy or lack of planning or lack of preparation. I think that propelled me to study further, and that's where I met people who were looking at the same thing, no? And together with a friend of mine, her name is Mylene Paterno. She's still a teacher, and she's working with a school now. She taught me a lot about this reading disability, and she had herself trained as well, and so I was taught by her. And then that's how it started. The two of us, we taught others, and now we're teaching others in different ways. And so I think it's important to know that together we would say that our goal is to be redundant. Our
Mm,
goal is that there are so many people who are carrying it forward that the two of us become unnecessary. And I think that pretty much we're almost there. There's a good cohort of teachers working on literacy difficulties and dyslexia. And I think that's one indicator, I think. And listening to the first session or the first segment, I heard both Jim and Nadia say that they start with a vision. And so it's the same thing. You start with the vision. I want all to see all Filipino children, all children of the world, in fact, reading and enjoying it. And so if that's the vision, I think you just keep going for it.
mm,
And the other thing I wanted to say, related to what Kazu mentioned earlier, is that there's no one right leadership. I think that's a very important point that I have to thank Kazu for bringing up. Because as a teacher, you need to see your students for who they are, not for what you want them to be. So sure, you want to take them to better skills, more joy, more fun in learning, but
mhm.
each of them will have their own way of getting there and doing that. And I think that's a very important insight. If you want to become a good teacher, a leader teacher, then we must all recognize that the children and fellow teachers, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
are different and diverse. And that diversity is very important. To recognize that diversity means you lead for inclusion, and you lead for togetherness, and you lead for accepting others. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating how we recognize our own strength, our own capacity, and what we're drawing in from other people, and just that idea of the right way, a right way, many options, many pathways to get to where we want to be. There's a lot of ideas. It leads me to think about a T-shirt that I have and a question that I have for Kazoo. I have a T-shirt that has some Lego bricks, and it says 6 bricks, a million ideas. And I wonder, when it was you came to the classroom with this idea of using Lego to connect students to something bigger. Specifically, I think it was around project management and how they could work on very intricate collaborative projects, but using something as a tool like Lego that they would be very familiar with. That probably felt like an unusual method or an unusual approach. And yet now, a few years later, I have all of my Lego, my duck kits that I use for professional development workshops that I do. I have them right here. Lego has become something that's so special for how we teach design and communication and thinking. So tell me a little bit about what your experience was like as you experienced or explored a new frontier by using Lego as this design method.
Wow, it takes an hour to talk about it, but we have only 10 minutes, right? I need to complete the show. But it's, someone was actually wrote on the comment. Also, Dr. Dina just mentioned like I think the greatest lesson I learned as a teacher in my life is there is a diversity. I mean, there's all students are different. If I use metaphor like as Dr. Dina is a professor of literacy, literacy and pedagogy, right? So there's not a normal, like each student's read it differently. Each student can decipher the letters a totally different way. That means some there are some students with dyslexia. They're just normal person. I mean, no, it's normal. Just students can read it, right?
Yeah.
As if you use a music metaphor as a music, Mark is actually orchestra leader, right? The leadership is just like a conductor. If you want to make a good harmony, you need to know there are various kinds of musical instruments. If you see, I use only violin, that is not leadership, right? So orchestra is, you need to make a good harmony by seeing there are a lot of differences, because not just difference of musical instruments, also there's a quality of difference in each person has, right? Mm-hmm. So leadership is something like you need to see the difference and try the best by using that kind of difference, and then make a good kind of work. The Lego is something like that. There's a lot of different kind of pieces, right? But if you think about it, some ideas and something you want to create, you need to use them. Mm-hmm. They're different pieces, but you need to use them, right? But you can create it. Same. Leadership is just like making something using a Lego, right? So leadership is not difficult. Leadership is not just like you can learn from just copying a great leaders in the world. Mm-hmm. Leadership, you can learn leadership just from Lego. It's very simple. Just go right after this talk. Just go to shop and buy Lego.
Mine's all over the floor right now. Everything looks organized, but over here there's a lot of Lego being played with. I find it interesting, when you think about different ways to get to the same destination, different solutions, different options. I was fascinated when I realized, and it was only about a year ago, that when you take a Lego plate and you turn it like this, that it will fit in between the pieces on top. It can stand a different way. Is that how Lego is designed to be used? No. But does it work? Yes. And it's a different way to design and to use those same tools in a different way. And when I think about what you do, Dr. Dina, with novice teachers and helping people see opportunities, it's all about recognizing that we can use a skill we have for a different purpose or a particular tool in a different way, and we get such incredible results out of it. So I want to ask each of you sort of a bit of a quick question before we get to the final one. If we think of leadership as a verb rather than as a title, what does that mean for you, and especially for the people that you're working with? Dr. Dina, why don't you answer first?
If leadership were a verb, then I would probably say it means reflect and act. Because you just can't go acting and moving and instituting things without really thinking through it first. And when we reflect, that means we listen, not only to ourselves, right? But to everyone who will be affected by any action thereafter. This is one of the lessons that I tried to imbibe and learn while I was at the Department of Education. It's the same lesson applied in a larger context. It's the same lesson which I learned as a classroom teacher. And I think that that's what should empower teachers, honestly, is that what you are in your classroom, what kind of leader you are there, that's the same principle applied in different contexts. If you become a principal, if you become a superintendent, whatever you become after, it's that same principle of thinking, listening, reflecting before acting, and then doing it all over again. It's what Freire told us to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a constant cycle over and over.
It's a cycle, yeah.
It's exciting to hear how you talk about that, because it's broken down into simple, understandable pieces, how they all work together. So the same question for you, Kazu. What does that difference mean when we think about leadership as a verb rather than as a title or a position?
I think everyone said the same thing. In the first segment, actually, Nadia actually mentioned the importance of making a journal, right? Taking a note of your life. Leadership is like a journey. It's not a state of being. It's a state of action being. So you need to always moving forward. They also need to, as just Dina mentioned, like you need to also reflect what you did. So it's a kind of reflective questioning. It's like always you need to do something, always think about it. It's like it's two wheels, and you need to think about it.
Yeah.
So leadership is not just doing, I do it, but do it, reflect, do it, reflect. It's just a journey. I think it's the best way to grow as a leader. I'm not good a leader, but the good leader, if you want to, as I said, if you want to develop your leadership in yourself, I think it's the best way is to take a journal or take a note of what you did in last class, next class. You need to think about it. How can make myself better in the next class, something like that.
Yeah, and it occurs to me that the word journal and journey share a lot of letters in common, and I'm sure that they share an origin, and so that connection between the two shouldn't be lost. We should keep that in mind. It's time for me to ask the final question of the segment, and so as I ask both of you this final question, just like I asked Jim and Nadia earlier, I hope the audience is commenting, but maybe it's worth tagging or mentioning the people who empowered you. Let us know how special it was, and let them know how special it was that they are your power source, that they helped ignite and lift that up in you. So I'll ask you first, Kazoo. And it is so good to see you on screen and to share this time together. But my final question for you, who empowered you? Who is that person who helped you see how much power you possess?
Well, there's actually a lot. There's no one, there's not just one, Of course, my family and my wife and my son, my best friends. There's actually good, really, recently I had a really good moment. Actually, we in Japan, we started a Global Teacher Prize in Japan. Then we did like a crowdfunding actually, and then I saw it at first, and it was we getting a little. So I thought, man, I think I cannot make it. But later, my best friends actually message me, if in the last moment, if it doesn't reach the point, just tell me, I can fund everything. So I was like, phew, it's like, I don't know. That best friends actually is not, best friends always actually support me. Don't think yourself, you are just by yourself. You are supported by many, many people, like, your family, your friends. So always you need to think about them. You need to thank, you need to be humbled.
Yeah.
Even in this situation,
Yeah. Well, and especially right now, as we're all spending so much more time in our own homes and with fewer people face to face, it's so even more important that we're keeping connected with those people who fuel us and who inspire us to keep finding new ways to engage that power. So Dina, Dr. Dina, the same for you. Who empowered you? Who's that person who helped you recognize and realize just how much power you possess?
Well, to begin with, it would be mom and dad, wouldn't it? Right? Um, they let me be as stubborn as I wanted to be, and they allowed me to try different things within limits, of course. So mom and dad were very instrumental in allowing me to discover things about myself. I also read voraciously as a child. And so all those people I met through these novels and these stories, they empowered me. They gave me they up to now they give me a vision of what can be. And as I read more, I mean, not only fiction as well as nonfiction, as I read, then your mind opens up. And I think the third one, similar to what Kazu has shared with us, I think that an important message in terms of who empowers us um, are the people we work with every day. They
Mhm.
empower us. Yeah. So children or co-teachers or bosses or supervisors, whoever they are, even your critics, they empower you. And I think that's a very important thing, that there's nothing wrong with the disagreement, because that forces you to think and reflect
Mhm.
and assess, and that is a process of empowerment. I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that's a very important thing to remember. You start with a position of strength from mom and dad, but after that, that's you create that, you build that forward, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for giving us ideas that are very easy to act on. You've made suggestions that, it's the evening for me, but it's just getting started in the day for you. Now have all day to think about what it would mean tomorrow to put even just one of these ideas into a new routine, to start forming it as a new habit that can be a powerful influence in what we do for ourselves and across our community, our country, global networks, whatever it might be. So I just want to say to you, maraming salamat, arigato gozaimasu, to both of you. This
Yes,
has been very exciting to have you.
Maraming
Thank,
salamat.
thank you both.
I hope you answered that question later, Mark.
I might.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Thanks,
Thank you.
Well,
Bye
Yes,
bye.
yes.
Thank you.
thank you. In science, I was thinking about this earlier today, and in science, we ask our students to learn about potential energy and kinetic energy. And it can sometimes be difficult to explore the concept of potential energy because we can't see it. But we can see an object in motion. So we can see that kinetic energy. And through the experience of seeing that and recognizing it, maybe that's what helps a child or helps us recognize how that object came to be in motion, to really understand its potential. So as we look at, how other people are acting and taking action, we can start to examine what's behind that, what actually helped them turn that potential into action. And so as we go into this third segment, that's really going to be very exciting. We're going to talk about how we unlock that action. We have two fantastic guests that are joining us. One is much, much closer to me now than the other, but we're going to start by welcoming Dr. Bert Tuga, who is the president of Philippine Normal University, a tireless champion for global citizenship education, and I think among the hardest working edu leaders that I know, designing and activating plans to sustain teacher education in the Philippines amidst the global pandemic. That is not an easy task. So welcome, Dr. Bert.
Hello, good morning, Mark. It's
Hello.
nice to see you again, and good morning to all your viewers.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Um,
I actually came in during the segment of Dr. Dina and Cass. I was listening to them. I learned a lot. Very insightful discussion.
Good. Well, we're also going to have someone else join us now too. Dr. Peter Esperanza is a math instructor at Barstow Community College in California, and his education journey from the Philippines to the U.S. are all linked together and out there for us to see through his YouTube channel and Number Bender website, where his flipped classroom approach had him ready for anything, including the rapid shift to remote learning. And I think I look at what each of you have done to show leadership in the last, let's say, 6 months to really help educators, both current and future, to understand what it means to take action and in a supportive way that's really about lifting up our whole community and our whole profession globally. So I'd like to start with this question first for you, Dr. Esperanza, or perhaps we'll go with Dr. Bert and Dr. Peter. So Dr. Peter, this one's for you first. How can teachers be empowered to find their own solutions to education problems in their communities?
Well, first of all, hello everyone. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. And thank you, Mark. And nice to see you again. And happy anniversary to empowerED. And to answer your question, to unlock the leadership for teachers to take some actions, I believe it will be coming from their core, from their being. Because as an educator, we are all master of our discipline: mathematics, science, music, literature, and English. But we need to find it in ourselves. We need to find it in our heart why we're teaching, and how we are going to use our influence, our power inside our classroom and also in our community, to be able to really extend our reach to the students that we have right now, and of course to influence the community in the process.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting as you were talking about that. A particular phrase comes to mind: you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. And if you have that readiness for whatever might come at us, because it's a part of, as you say, the heart of what we do, we can be prepared to respond in those moments for ourselves and for others. Dr. Burt, the same question for you: how can teachers feel that sense of empowerment to be solution oriented, to be finding those solutions to the problems that they face?
Thank you, Mark. That question makes me remember an event I attended yesterday. It's a Project Gala event. It's a group of teachers online. They invited me to give a message of inspiration to our teachers while they're preparing for the October 5 opening. What the good thing about this organization, it's a group of teachers, and they have recognized that there are issues and problems related to the implementation of the flexible learning modality. And so they have recognized that students have problems with gadgets, connectivity, and so on. And this group of people online, they launched a project. They tried to come up with donation drives in order to collect gadgets and connectivity support to the students in their own little way. What I mean in this sharing is that these teachers have recognized that there are already problems in our education and in our community, especially with our younger learners. So in this sense, they are already recognizing the problem, and they have developed their own solution without their superiors telling them what to do. So meaning they have sensed that they have that responsibility to act on the issue, and they can do something about this problem. I think that's my answer to that.
Yeah, there's a true sense of independence and professional autonomy that that someone gets to activate that first time. That's got to be, for me, it's been years since I felt that moment where, oh my gosh, I get to do this and it's okay, and having, I think for me, it's now 17 years in education. It's been a long time since then, but when I think back to those moments as an early career teacher, it felt very special to know that I could just do something, and that there was a disposition of trust for what I was going to do. Dr. Peter, for you, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what teachers should consider for their education projects or solutions for them to be sustainable. You've got a YouTube channel with more than 100,000 subscribers, and congratulations, by the way. And you have, an incredible collection of videos at numberbender.com that are in both English and Filipino. And when I think about all that you've done, what did you have to consider so that project would be sustainable? And it wasn't just something that you did for, one course or 1 year and then gave up on.
When I started my YouTube channel, I started it because I want to help my students inside my classroom in Warsaw High School. I did not plan of going on public. I didn't even plan on putting all my videos for public consumption, because one, I don't have the confidence to do that at the beginning. And two, I want to just stay focused to my students so that I'll be able to do more. Because I've noticed that if I always think of a bigger audience or a bigger people and what they're going to be saying or how they're going to be reacting to my content, I tend to lose my confidence and just not do it at all. But when I started to just focus on the 30 students that I have in my classroom, I started to unlock a lot of things that I can do this, that I have a skill for this, that my students are giving me a lot of positive feedbacks and they're sharing all my videos to their other friends who are studying mathematics in different classes. So then I decided to go and hit that public button and take the bullet and share it to the world without looking back, and just thinking that if my students inside the classroom are benefiting from it, what more could it do to the students who are going to be sitting in on my classroom through YouTube? And that's when I decided to also create video lectures in Filipino, because during that time in 2013, no one is speaking in Filipino in my native tongue who are teaching mathematics online, and that's where I came from. That's how Number Bender started. To just think of one or two Filipino students who struggled in mathematics just like how I struggled when I was still a student. Thinking that, I just created content and hope that I'll be able to influence and help one or two students in the process.
Yeah,
And the rest, of course, is history.
it's you've said something that perfectly aligns with something Kazoo said. Start with the students in front of you, and now after taking that very focused approach to the beginning, now I kind of want there to be an MMK episode about what you're doing now, and so that people can recognize what it meant to be providing this kind of resource for free. The generosity that you're giving this this knowledge and this time to a whole to a whole group of students, and you don't even know how many across the Philippines have engaged with those videos in that language, but you've created some access for them, and that access piece is such an important part of that journey. I think about what I know of Dr. Burt and our brief time together last year in Naga City, and when I got to visit him at PNU, I know that he is very focused on global citizenship education and getting people to think about what is beyond the curriculum on the page or beyond the curriculum in the book. So I wonder, Dr. Burt, could you talk in your context of GISED about what teachers could be considering so that when they take that first step in that initiative, how it becomes sustainable?
Thank you, Mark. I think everyone will agree with me if I say that teacher empowerment is a complex construct. I think empowerment is an integral part of any reform that we have in education or in our communities. But while empowerment generally is associated with site-based management and shared decision-making, there are underlying dimensions of this construct that are varied and informative. And for me, in our experience with global citizenship education, I think teachers should consider different ideas for education projects or solutions to become sustainable in our communities. And one that I recognize is, of course, the degree of involvement in decision-making in their communities. I think it's important to highlight that when deciding to take an education project or solution in the community, one important consideration is to relate it to the participation of teachers in critical decisions that directly affect their work, their family, and their community. One very important question mark is how much do teachers willing to invest in terms of time and resources? And in many cases, this means participation in and responsibility for decisions involving scheduling, involving the role of the people in the community and other programmatic concerns. No, providing teachers with a significant role in community decisions making or decision making is a key element in empowering them and making sustainable solutions in the community. Mark,
you've both referenced access as a really key element. Creating accessible materials or accessing the opportunities that are there for you. I mean, so many education leaders, head teachers, principals, superintendents, regional directors, they make decisions based on the feedback that they hear. And when teachers are invited to share their opinions, or try things out, we can so often be reluctant. And if 5 times in a row a particular idea is passed on and doesn't go anywhere, that doesn't mean that someone's opinion is just no longer valid. It's just that there hasn't been that right moment yet, and keeping up the energy and the commitment that when it does work, it'll be great. Dr. Peter, did you ever have a video that got significantly fewer views than you thought it would?
Well, there's a lot of them. I have like 800 plus videos, and most of them, yes. Sometimes I have this in my head that this particular vlog or video that I want to share to the students will earn a lot of views, and then it turns out it's just gonna. I only had like 100 or 200 views after uploading it for a week, and but that's. Mark, to be honest, that's because that's not how I look at it.
Right.
Number of views when I create videos, because every time I create my videos, I always put myself in the situation wherein I am teaching the little Peter Esperanza that I was before. I struggled in mathematics. I cried so many times because I cannot, for the life of me, understand the language of mathematics growing up. And when I started to, but then again, I majored in mathematics in college. But I was forced into that situation because of my parents' support that I can do everything, even though I know that I can't. But with that in mind, I persevered, and I was able to see how other magnificent students in my block are seeing numbers, and then it hits me and it clicked. And that's what I always think when I create my video. I speak to the language of students who are really struggling in mathematics. I understand them. I understand how they think. I understand their frustrations, and that's where I'm coming from. And that's basically how I create all my videos up until right now. I always put myself in that situation every time I hit that record button and upload my videos to YouTube. And now, as what you have mentioned about leadership and maybe involving other people with what you're doing, this is what I am capitalizing on in this pandemic, trying to network with other teachers because I cannot just do it on my own. Imagine if there will be multiple Peter Esperanza who will be creating their own content online in science, English, music, biology. We will have more students who will gain access to high quality content that we could share to our students, especially now that we're in the middle of a pandemic that everyone is at home learning. Yeah. So,
well, yeah. And I observed something really special about what you just said. You work in a quantitative discipline, and when you assess, you look at it from a qualitative perspective. Like you said right away, the view count doesn't matter. The impact that is very hard to quantify, but is evident in the confidence with which students come back. Like that's really what's more exciting. And so I want to turn to Dr. Burt and ask a question that connects with that, about some examples of some of the education projects that you've undertaken, or that you know of that teachers could explore as an example of something that is sustainable and is a way to boost that teacher empowerment.
Thanks, Mark. We can mention a lot of examples, but to answer this question, I prefer to share several considerations or criteria to ensure that our education projects in the community will be successful. I think one important consideration is to assess the community need. To ensure that a project has significant impact for the community, it is important to address the most urgent needs of our community. By doing so, it is important to rely with the respected community leaders and members of the community for an assessment of its needs and for greater background on the issues that the community faces. I think for many of the projects that we will implement, I think that's a starting point for me. Second is building trust. this is a very important aspect of school community relationship. No, there are several histories of miscommunication, neglect, distrust, and even conflict in our communities. For me, it's helpful to be aware of these histories and the dilemmas they pose for the school community partnership. If necessary, we can enter into a dialogue with other community members. So I think these are just some of the criteria that we can consider to make our education projects impactful and sustainable. But of course, there are a lot of examples out there, Mark.
Yeah. Oh, there are so many, and we'll ask Jim to have another live session that's just all about project examples. I think that would be a great next idea, Jim. I know you're still watching, so keep that in mind. There's great advice from Dr. Burt on that, and so unfortunately, my friends, the time's come for the final question for both of you. But before you answer, I'd just like to make mention of a special memory that I have from my visit to PNU last summer. And when you truly get to know a community, you do that by sharing in a local custom or experience. And I wish I could be asking you this question right now, Dr. Burt, sitting together at PNU's most special meeting point, UTMT, under the mango tree. And so I'm going to ask you first, and then we'll turn to Dr. Peter. Dr. Burt, who empowered you? Who is that person who helped you see how much power you possess?
That's a difficult question. There are a lot of people who empowered me. When I started as a young teacher many years ago, I always say that to become a leader, in my case, to like the new president of PNU, I always associate it with three things. First is, of course, competence. Second is character, and the third one is opportunity. And I think to answer that question, I consider those people who provided me opportunity, leadership opportunities in the process. They empowered me, like my previous superiors, my previous bosses. I think they have given me the opportunity to lead, and for me, that's enough to associate the kind of leadership that I have with them, and of course, our students.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are the raison d'etre why we are existing, while the university continues to provide the kind of services that we do for them.
Thank you so much for that, and I do quite sincerely hope that the next time we have a chance to chat, it's going to be under the mango tree at PNU, much closer to where I am. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Peter and I are actually in the same time zone. On the west coast of North America, and it's Saturday evening for us, and we're hanging out with other teachers. There's no better thing we could possibly be doing. So, Dr. Peter, I'm going to ask you this question. You've had quite a journey professionally and personally, and so who empowered you? Who is this person, or the person in your life that helped you recognize just how much power you've got?
I would say my 5th grade science teacher, Mrs. Gabrielio, rest in peace. She's the first teacher who believed that I am smart, even though I thought that I wasn't. She coached me to compete in a science quiz bee, even though I thought that I am just playing all the time. I was in my 5th grade, and I know that I was not that smart. And that's me coming as a teacher, that sometimes teachers believe more to our students than the students themselves. And that's who I am as an educator. I always believe and always push my students to be the best of what they can be, because if Mrs. Gabriela was able to groom me and make me believe that I have that power too, to my students too. Just tell them that they can.
Yeah. It is so exciting to have asked this question to each of the guests that we've had in this session together, and to hear such similarities in the type of action that those people took to help us recognize that kind of power. I was challenged a little bit earlier to see if I would answer this same question.
You should answer, Mark.
As we close the session, I'm not gonna talk about maybe one person, but I will say there is one person who is the most recent to have helped me recognize I need to do more, I can do more, and there's still more power to unlock. And many of you who are watching will know of Ryan Homan in Bicol. And Ryan, the connection with him helped me remember why I'm in education, what I'm here to do, and helped me recognize that for years when I would say things like, oh, I'm just a music teacher, as if being just a music teacher is a little thing. You know, I've gone on an airplane with 120 students for a week to Disneyland. There is no, I'm just a music teacher. That is a lot of work and responsibility. And in my connection with Ryan and his community, I've started to recognize, again, what it means to look differently at our own community, to look differently at the people that surround us and recognize little things, big things in their character and provide opportunity for them to explore that and to push that further. That helped me, you know, and so at the same time, as I recognize Ryan, you know, I will also recognize, you know, Jesus Ensalada and Mam Venus, who are and Wendell, can't forget Sir Wendell, who are the, you know, the Global Teacher Prize family in the Philippines, and what they have shown me about working in a system that is very different than mine. It's helped me see how I can be making a difference in my own community just by looking at a colleague and understanding more about what they do and where they are. So I'm glad I could answer the question, and thank you for challenging me to answer it too. Thank you very much, Maraming Salamat, Dr. Burt. Thank you so much, Dr. Peter, for joining us. We have one more guest that we get to share with everybody, which makes me really, really excited. It's my pleasure to introduce someone who I think is the Philippines' unofficial global ambassador for education, Director Margarita Ballesteros from the International Cooperation Office at DepEd. Maraming salamat for joining us, Director Marge. I hope you're well, and we would love to hear from you.
Hi, Mark. It's good to see you here.
You too.
And we say in Filipino, when it's our first time again to welcome a guest, who would say mabuhay.
Mabuhay.
Yeah. And of course, thank you, Jim, for having me here this morning, and to my former boss. I call her Teacher Dina, former Undersecretary of the Department of Education. And of course, a good friend also from the New York, Nadia. Of course, you introduced me to her. I can still remember that one lazy afternoon at the Atlantis in Dubai when we discussed about how to bring the GTPA in the Philippines. And how are we going to help our teachers? And months after that, I was surprised seeing Nadia in my office at the Department of Education, and she was accompanied by Jim. And of course, I have been admiring the Lego guy of Tokyo, Japan. The first time I met her in Dubai as well. And of course, to a good friend, Dr. Bert Tuga, my second time to see here Peter Esperanza, and to all our friends and fellow educators from not only from the Philippines but from all over the world. Thank you for tuning in today's second year anniversary of the Empowered. I was with you from the very start, from the introduction of Mark all the way from British Columbia in Canada, and with the discourses or with the conversation with USEC. Dina, you know, Teacher Dina is known for her programs in reading, and she's championing in the training of teachers addressing different reading disabilities. I was once trained at the Philippine Normal University as a reading educator back in the 90s. And Teacher Dina was one of those who I looked up to as a mentor in reading education. But I was asked by Jim to give my closing. It's a second year, but I don't feel like giving a closing, but instead giving a challenge, not only to you guys as GTP ambassadors, but to all teachers, especially those who are looking forward to teaching come October 5 and beyond during this time of the pandemic. It's not easy, I know. We are like diving into the unknown every day, but we are armed with a number of things. One, of course, that's guiding us all is the issued policies of the department. And of course, our training that have been provided not only by the government sector, but also our friends from the private sector. And also, it's high time for us to what Mark has been saying earlier, to continue surrounding ourselves. And this was rejoined by I think James, if not Nadia, to really surround ourselves with people, not only for people who care about us and who care for us, but with people who we can learn a lot and who can actually guide us. Because a number of our teachers, they would say in my conversation with teachers here where I am, I mean the northern part, by the way, Mark and Nadia and Peter, I mean the northern part of the Philippines. And Jim kept on saying about Sorsogon earlier, that's in the south. I mean the north. And up there in the mountains, it's like around 45 minutes from here. That's the kingdom of Jim Toscano. And surrounding ourselves with people who can help us, push us, and motivate us is one of the things I think as one of the many things that as teachers should be doing this time, not only this time, but even all the way out, because we don't just have the torch, others do have. And sometimes their torch is lighted, well lighted, not only Mark's light behind him. But when I say the light of the torch is they have the experiences, they have the knowledge that they have acquired all these years. And we have to look at them. And unlocking that leadership in us is really having that confidence to have a breakthrough. And when we break through, we get elevated, we get empowered. And when we are elevated, empowered, we also stay grounded. And when we stay grounded, we can do a number of things. I gave these 3 points for reflection last Friday during the Korea Philippine Teacher Exchange Alumni Association Grounded series. And I have this three. This I was I know Teacher Dina knows about this, and all teachers out there, of course, Mark, you know this, the basic 3 R's in literacy. That's reading, writing, and arithmetic. But my challenge this morning would be for all of us to review our philosophy as educators along the way, now that we are given this time of the pandemic to look at it on another lens. What have we been doing? And what is it that we need to do beyond even whatever circumstances or even climate challenges that would come along the way. So we need to review our philosophy as educators, because in these trying times, we educators are also susceptible to mental health problems. And we have to anchor ourselves to strong values and virtues so we can continue to move forward with our mission, our profession, our vocation to teach our learners whatever the situation may be. Second, as a graduate of philosophy, Jim has said, reflect. And I would reinforce by saying, aside from reflecting and asking why, we also need to do some kind of self introspection. Start with the why, yes, Why am I doing this? What have I done? And how do I move forward? As teachers, we ask a number of whys and what, and also don't forget how. And the third is, this is Teacher Dina's favorite, R for reform. As an educators, we must remember that we have the power to change. You have the power to change yourselves and teachers. We as educators have to learn, relearn, and unlearn towards self-actualization and for the benefit of our dear learners. There is so much that have been said for today, and so much challenges are out there as we dive through this unknown that we face. By October 5 here in the Philippines, and with Peter Tabichi on the other hand, in January 2021, and with other GTPs moving around the world online, I know they have been motivating. You guys are awesome. And a lot of teachers have been telling me, how did you meet all these people out there? And I said, very simply, you just get to know. And knowing them is not only getting to chat with them, but also sharing what they are already doing and what they have done that I think it's very effective in the education sector. So to the Global Teacher Prize ambassadors, as we welcome a new member, Wendell Alvarez, who also we have from Bicol, and that's Kamsur. Thank you. Thank you, Nadia, for your sharing all the way from Brooklyn to Peter from California. And of course, to our guy from the Lingo guy, I call him, from Tokyo, and the very supportive and very loving Kuya to everyone here in the Philippines, Mark Reid of Vancouver, to Yusek Dina, and to President Bert. Thank you for joining Jim this morning, for joining the Filipino people, the Filipino teachers in celebrating the Teachers Month. And I would say teachers' voice matters. So to everyone, magandang umaga. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Director. It's been a really exciting hour and a half altogether, and we've heard a lot of different pieces of advice and perspective and things to think about. And I hope that everyone can identify just one thing to carry with them to try today, to try tomorrow. Just that one little piece can be the start of something wonderful. And so I have a bit of a prop to make this point to close things off. I have this very special mask here, and so many of us are wearing a mask, but right now I'm carrying a mask that is celebrating the wonderful people who have gone through the Korea-Philippines Teacher Exchange Program, just like Director Marge was talking about. And this mask is not just a necessity right now during a time of pandemic, but instead I've decided that it also is a way for me to keep remembering what it means to be a part of a community. What it meant to reach out to Danny Osorio in Caloocan City and say, how can I support you, and how can I connect with you in this initiative that you're undertaking to help others? And that one little gesture can really make a difference and keeps me going in a new direction. And the one thing that you try this week can keep you going in a new direction to discover all of that empowerment that you've got. I want to take a moment to thank all of our guests, no matter what time zone or country they have joined us from. And most importantly, a big congratulations to Jim Toscano and all of the folks that have supported his movement over the past year as we celebrate this anniversary of empowerED. And of course, to all of you for joining us. It's a really special thing to do on a Sunday morning in the Philippines. For so many of you, you decided to take time in care for your profession and to engage in developing yourselves as people and as professionals. So thank you so much for joining us. There will be an important evaluation for you to respond to regarding this live discussion. You can receive a certificate of appreciation and participation, but more importantly, it helps all of the folks that are developing the empowered movement to really respond to the actual needs of teachers. And that's what we're all here to do. So thank you so much to everyone for joining. It is almost bedtime for me here in Canada, but again, maraming salamat to all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. So I'm just popping in back, and I'm gonna bring the other member of our crew, Nadia. Thank you so much, Mark.
My pleasure.
You were on fire. Thank you so much for all the wonderful questions that you had, and thank you so much for hosting this.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And I just want to say, Jim, you are a rock star. You are such a humble individual who doesn't like to be acknowledged and celebrated because you're always thinking of everyone else. But I want to publicly say it has been an honor and privilege to be your friend, to watch you during this journey, to see how much you've grown and you continue to give back, not only to your immediate community, but your entire country. Like, Jim is the most proudest Filipino I've ever met, who will carry the Philippines on his back. And when he said, I want the educators of the Philippines to feel just as important, even if they can't go to the Global Teacher Prize, I want their voices to be heard, because our people need to be celebrated. And to see how many things you've accomplished, whether it's been your podcast, whether it's now become your lives that you host, you just continue to pour love into this. So as your Purple Rain crew, we are extremely proud, and thank you for always just being your authentic self. I love you very much. And
Thank
you too, of course, because there is no Purple Rain without you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Nadia and Mark. So much love for you. So much love for our dear speakers, Dr. Dina Ocampo, Kazu from Japan. Thank you so much, Dr. Peter Esperanza, Dr. Bert Tuga, and of course our our talent manager, Director Margarita Ballesteros. Thank you so much. Mark, this was a wonderful episode, and I will treasure this so much. Nadia, your words always empower both of us, Mark and I, and thank you so much for this one. This is the official public appearance of the Purple Rain team. So it's our support group team, and we're very proud to bring you. And by the way, just to I want to take this opportunity. Nadia runs a very, very wonderful platform. Also, it's Elevated. It's on YouTube. It's on our Facebook at the Lopez Effect. And Dr. Peter Esperanza, they have their own YouTube accounts. Please search for these amazing people. Follow them so that even after this episode, you continue to learn from each other. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.